If you did not see this debate between Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom, you're going to see some of that in just a second. Now, I didn't have time to watch the entire debate, but these two issues in particular were what I wanted to focus on, which is immigration and crime. So if you remember a couple of months ago, Sean Hannity actually said he was interviewing Gavin Newsom and he asked them if he would debate Ron DeSantis, right? So it looks like that actually did happen. I'm pretty sure these were good ratings for Sean Hannity. Let's be real. There was something in it for him with this as well. So I want to go ahead and dive into the first topic that they covered, or that I'm covering, is immigration. Now, this is a touchy topic right now, particularly with the migrant situation that's happening in the United States in cities like New York City and Chicago, where the mayors of those cities have made criticism towards Joe Biden and the way that he's handling the border crisis. So I thought it would be interesting to hear what they have to say in reference to this particular issue. So let's go ahead and dive right into immigration. Here we go.
As we speak, there is a phenomenon. It is playing out across the entire country. Americans, they are leaving blue states in droves in favor of red states. You can see numbers on the screen right now from the years 2021 and 2022. These particular numbers are stark in the state that you lead. In the case of you, Governor Newsom, according to the U.S. Census, this is where the numbers come from. In 2021, 2022, California's lost 750,000 residents to other states.
Pause here for a second. I just want us to focus on these numbers because I do want to point something out. So California is losing a lot of residents. This is not new, though. This did not, I want to be very clear, this didn't start this year. And this is not just because of immigration. So context is important, right? People have been fleeing California because California is too expensive. We're going to take a look again at that out of reach housing report. I know I've shown it on this show before, but I like to refer to it again so that people really understand just how expensive the state of California is. Doesn't matter if you're in Northern or Southern California, it's a very expensive place to live. So that's the reason why people have been fleeing California. I want to give you that context because I don't want you to think it's just because of immigration. It's not just because of immigration. Texas also is having immigration, issues as well. And residents from California have been moving to states like Texas and Arizona. So if it was just an issue in reference to immigration, they wouldn't move to those states that are actually lined up across the border, just like they are. Now, he also points out here that Ron DeSantis' state, Florida, has actually gained residents. So plus 454K. But again, I want to point out, because I think context is important. You do have to understand that Florida is one of those states that people have been known to move to, particularly those that are retirees. I know living up here in New England is not uncommon for people here to retire and then move south to Florida. Part of that has to do with the fact that when you are retired, you are living on a fixed income for most people, right? If you don't have another side gig going, another hustle, right? So if you're living on a fixed income, it's probably good for you to move to a state that doesn't have like the property taxes. You don't have to worry about those expenses. There's also the weather, right? A lot of people move there because it's warmer weather. Then you also still have to deal with the hurricanes. So I want to provide that information so that you understand this is not something that just started this year because of the migrant situation. This has been something that's been happening for quite some time. Let's go back in.
DeSantis, during that same 2-year period, you gained 454,000 residents from other states. So Governor DeSantis, we had a coin toss. I was not part of it. I missed it. But apparently, Governor Newsom, you won the coin toss. And you chose to let Governor DeSantis have the first question. You will get the last word tonight. So I begin with you. For Governor Newsom, I will ask, what your response is on this as well. It's a simple question. How do you explain this phenomenon? Governor, what's going on?
When I was in the Navy, I got orders to go to Naval Amphibious Base Coronado in Southern California. And I was a lifelong Floridian, but I went there and I was like, man, this is one of the most beautiful places on earth. And I think California has more natural advantages than any state in the country. You almost have to try to mess California up. And yeah, that's what Gavin Newsom has done since he's been governor. He's the first governor to ever lose population. They actually, at one point, ran out of U-Hauls in the state of California because so many people were leaving. Of course, he's imposed restrictions on his own people while exempting himself from those restrictions and going to the French Laundry while his people were suffering. He led the country in school closures, locking kids out of school while he had his own kids in private school in person. Now, he's very good at spinning these tales. He's good at being slick and slippery. He'll tell a blizzard of lies to be able to try to mask the failures. But the reality is they have failed because of his leftist ideology. And the choice for America is this. What Biden and Harris and Newsom want to do is take the California model and do that nationally. In Florida, we showed that conservative principles work. This country must choose freedom over failure.
Okay, so there's a little bit to unpack there. So what I noticed initially about this debate, if you listen closely to Ron DeSantis's voice, his voice sounds a little bit shaky. I don't know if he was just nervous, but I feel like he was more nervous in this debate than he was in the Republican primary debates. And I'm not quite sure why. There's more people to compete with in the GOP primary debate, but his voice sounds a little bit nervous, a little shaky, right? So let's talk about some of the things that he mentioned there. Yes, California, it's a problem, right? Like it's very expensive. A lot of people have been fleeing that state. But again, it's not new. It has increased over time. So he is correct about that. He's actually correct about Gavin Newsom. Basically, yes, he did lock down California, but he allowed himself and his family to have special privileges that other Californian residents did not have. That's true. That's right. So, but what I want to add here is that it's not like Florida was perfect. And I have friends that live in both states, California and Florida. I've been to Florida. I have not been to California, but I will say Florida has had some issues too, right? So let me show you something really quick and we'll come back to the video because I think this is important for people to see. If we look at this out of reach report, which I've shown on the show before, this is the report for 2023. I just want to show you California and Florida. So California, again, it is number one in the highest housing wage. This is correct. Ron DeSantis is not incorrect about the cost of living in California. Yes, that is very much problematic. If you need to make $42.25 an hour in California just to have a 2-bedroom rental home, if you make minimum wage, you have to work 109 hours a week. So yes, that is a problem. Let's be clear, people. That's a problem. However, Florida isn't walking on sunshine and rainbows, folks, because Florida is 11th in the highest housing wage. You need to make $30.59 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom rental home in Florida. If you make a minimum wage in Florida, you need to work 111 hours a week in order to afford that 2-bedroom rental. And this is why I wanted to show you this, because Florida is a red state. It's not a swing state anymore. Let's stop calling it that. It's a red state. It has a couple of blue pockets, but when it comes to voting now, it is a red state. So this is an example of a red state that does have a high cost of living. Florida did not always used to be this way. It has increased under Governor DeSantis' leadership. And I had to show people this because it's happened under both governors, Ron DeSantis in Florida and Gavin Newsom in California. Both of them have this issue. Now, one more so than the other, but Florida, it still squeaks out in that top 15 in reference to high cost of living. We can look at another red state, for an example, like Alaska is 18th when it comes to the housing wage in the United States. So it's not just the blue states. There are more blue states that are that way, but there are some red states that are in that category as well. So I wanted to show you that because I did want you to just have a better picture of that. Let's go back to the debate.
Governor Newsom, your reaction.
Well, it's good to be with you, Sean. It's nice also to see you in a tie as well tonight. Good to be with you, Ron. And
I dressed up for the occasion, Governor.
No, I'm impressed and I'm grateful. Look, it's an important occasion. This is an important conversation. And I think it's important to folks watching. They're probably wondering, what are we actually doing here? And I want to answer that very directly. I'll tell you why I'm here. I'm here to tell the truth about the Biden-Harris record and also compare and contrast Ron DeSantis' record and the Republican Party's record as a point of contrast that's as different as daylight and darkness. You want to bring us back to a pre-1960s world, America in reverse. You want to roll back hard-earned national rights on voting rights, on civil rights, on LGBTQ rights, on women's rights, not just access to abortion, but also access to contraception. You want to weaponize grievance. You are focusing on false separateness. You in particular, Ron, are on a banning binge, a cultural purge, intimidating and humiliating people you disagree with. You and President Trump are really trying to light democracy on fire. So, Sean, there are profound differences tonight, and I look forward to engaging. But there's one thing in closing that we have in common is neither of us will be the nominee for our party in 2024.
Okay, let's unpack what Gavin Newsom just said here, because especially that part there at the end. So yes, the things that he said about Ron DeSantis are true. When it comes to the social issues, they are very much different, right? Ron DeSantis does want restrictions when it comes to issues like abortion. Obviously, he has different opinions in reference to the LGBTQ community as well. So obviously, like, those things are correct. What I thought was interesting was the statement that he made at the end, where he said, neither one of us are going to be the nominee come 2024. So why are they doing this debate? That was something I did not really understand. Now, there have been rumors, there have been whispers that Gavin Newsom could replace Joe Biden. Gavin Newsom has denied that multiple times. And other politicians that are close to Joe Biden have also denied that. Of course, anything could change next year. It's not to say that they don't lie to us, and they haven't lied to us before. But this, to me, kind of seems like this was Gavin Newsom's way of just basically reassuring people once again that he is not going to step in for Joe Biden. So again, I ask, both of you know you're not going to be the nominee in 2024. So why are you having this debate? Something to think about, people.
Governor, great opening statement, but
Didn't
it
answer
did not
the question.
It
I mean, I
didn't
think-
address the issue. Can you explain this migration out of California and going to red state, blue state?
Well, hold on. You mean the last 2 years, more Floridians going to California than Californians going to Florida?
No, I put up on. I put
That's
up on
just,
the
by the way,
screen.
that's going to be fun to fact check. So we'll just start right there. California has no peers. California dominates. Sizable 21 state populations combined. It's the fifth largest economy in the world. We dominate. Number one manufacturing state. We dominate in two-way trade and research and development, access to innovation, more scientists, more researchers, more engineers, more Nobel laureates in the state of California than any.
California also dominates in homelessness. Oh my God. The things that he's mentioning, let's go back a little bit, because this is a class divide. I just want to point out.
That's going to be fun to fact check. So we'll just start right there. California has no peers. California dominates. Sizable 21 state populations combined. It's the fifth largest economy in the world. We dominate. Number one manufacturing state. We dominate in two-way trade and research and development, access to innovation, more scientists, more researchers, more engineers, more Nobel laureates in the state of California than any other state in the nation. The finest system of higher education.
Pause. Did you guys notice something? With the exception of manufacturing, all of these other industries that he mentioned, these are industries that are part of the professional managerial class. What about the working class people? Right? The tech industry, innovation. Yes, we know California has Silicon Valley. Yes, they have all of that, right? So there are a lot of software companies and tech companies in that Silicon Valley area. But when Gavin Newsom mentions that, what he leaves out, and this is on purpose, what he leaves out is that all of that tech and innovation that came into California, particularly that northern part of California, that actually made California more expensive for the people who actually grew up there and lived in areas like San Jose. San Jose is also completely unaffordable now for the average human being in this country. So this is something that we have to think about. Listen, I'm all for innovation. I am not against technology. But I've seen the same problem happen here in Eastern Massachusetts, where a lot of the tech companies that came into Boston, these industries have actually made it more expensive for people who are from the area, the locals, to continue to live in the area. So he is pointing out the pros about the professional managerial class. The problem that I think needs to be addressed in reference to California and its economy is the working class people. Let's remember they had the opportunity to give everybody health care in California. They had the votes to actually pass single payer in California, and the insurance companies came in and said no. And just like that, they decided not to bring it to a vote. So it is the working class people and the poor people in California that are having a tough time. And I would also add middle class too, because if you're middle class in California, let's say you're making $100,000 or $120,000 a year, sounds like a lot. But if you live in that Silicon Valley, radius, which I would say includes San Jose, or you live in that Los Angeles radius, is that really a lot of money? Gavin Newsom's out of touch. Let's continue.
It's the birthplace of life science and biotech and nanotechnology. We dominate in green tech. We dominate in high tech. We dominate in artificial intelligence. So with respect, I think it's an interesting campaign strategy for Ron DeSantis to be bashing a state of 40 million Americans when California simply has no peers.
Tech to tech. We dominate this tech to tech. That's it.
Well, that's a pretty slick way of not answering your question. He went on a binge of putting out a lot of left-wing platitudes. Here's what I would say. I talked to a lot of the people that have moved from California to Florida, and we never used to get people from California to Florida or really anywhere in the East, because why would you leave California? It's got the best weather, great natural forces. Excuse me, sir. But one of the things that I did, I was talking to a gentleman, a couple.
Guys, I'm going to let the debate breathe, but it's his turn. Let's take turns.
So
I just want to point out something here that I think is kind of interesting. Someone pointed it out in the chat. The hair. Look at both of them with the hair, right? So they got the hair going for them. I've said this before. I said that Gavin Newsom looks like he should be on a soap opera instead of being a politician. We can put him on As the World Turns. Bryce says Newsom looks like the Gomez in the Addams Family. Oh, dear. Yeah, it's really, really interesting, these two.
Talking to a fella who had made the move from California to Florida, and he was telling me that Florida is much better governed, safer, better budget, lower taxes, all this stuff. And he's really happy with the quality of life. And then he paused and he said, by the way, I'm Gavin Newsom's father-in-law. So we do count Gavin's in-laws as some of the people that have fled California and come to the state of Florida. And why are we getting people to come? We have a 50-year low in the crime rate. You don't see in the last 10 years, we've had a 45% decline in homelessness. California's had a 45% increase in homelessness. We back the blue. I was walking the streets of San Francisco a couple months ago, and I had some of the cops in San Francisco do a beeline to come over to me, and I didn't know what they were going to say. And they're like, we want to thank you for standing for law enforcement because we don't get that support in the state of California. So
pause here for a second. He's correct about the homelessness issue. Like I can't negate that. I'm not a fan of Ron DeSantis, but I can't negate that.
People understand quality of life matters. They understand that Florida's doing it right. And I can tell you the numbers speak for themselves. We have way more people moving to this state than leaving. Gavin can't say the opposite. More people are leaving California than are moving into California.
Let me bring up
coming to California the other way around the last 2 years. But let's talk about crime.
Governor, hold on. Governor, wait a minute.
Okay, let me interrupt here for just a second. Ron DeSantis is correct about that. The number of people leaving California is greater than the number of people that are leaving Florida. That is actually correct. You ain't got to like the dude, but if you just look at the data will show you that. The problem that I have with this conversation is that neither one of them are really addressing the issue or the question that Sean Hannity asked them in the very beginning. The question was migration, right? They talked about migrants. They talk about immigration. That's what the topic is about. Why people are leaving, why people are coming, et cetera. But neither one of them get back to the immigration, the migration issue, which I thought was interesting. Okay, let's go back to As the World Turns.
I think
Hold on a second.
He said a lot of things that were factually untrue, including that 50-year crime low, which his own law enforcement team said you should not be using.
You have yet to address the issue, but I asked you twice. You don't want to answer it. But the issue of why the migration out of red states, out of blue states.
We just established more Floridians coming to California in the last 2 years than the
overall.
other.
You had a net loss of 7.
Establish it.
It's a
You just
fact.
asserted it.
It's a fact.
No, it's not a fact.
It is a fact.
So people don't have to. This is the thing with Gavin Newsom, right? Like, he thinks he's slick. This is another reason why I say he could be on a soap opera. He could just give the soap opera stare and go, Jane, the baby's not yours. He could do that. I think he could do that. Just because you have people from Florida moving to California, and Ron DeSantis is saying, Gavin Newsom is saying that, well, people, more Floridians are coming to California. You know, California is increasing in population the past 2 years. And he's like, Ron DeSantis is trying to say, no, people are leaving California. They're moving to states like Florida, Arizona, Texas, et cetera. I think what Gavin Newsom is trying to do is he's basically trying to say that, no, like, our residents are not moving to Florida. Okay, let's say that is the case. Let's say you're right, Gavin Newsom, which I don't think he is. That is one of the states they are moving to. But let's say that you are correct. That doesn't change the fact that residents of California are leaving your state, and they have been leaving your state en masse. It's not just California. Illinois is one of those states too. With Illinois, if I remember correctly, it had something to do with the changes of taxes in Illinois. But California is the big one. You can add New York, particularly New York City to this equation as well. People fleeing New York City. But that's the point that Gavin Newsom is not addressing. The fact that people are leaving your state, whether they're moving to Florida, is irrelevant. They're leaving your state because it's too expensive to live there. And it rounds out.
Moving on. Let's go. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey.
Okay. So interesting. We are going to go to the next topic, which is crime. So let's get, oh my God. Oh boy, let's get into the thick of it here with the crime issue. Here we go. What a doozy.
Breathing room. I don't mind the debate taking on a life of its own, but let each other breathe. I don't want to be the hall monitor. Please don't turn me into that. Anyway, let's look at the issue of crime. FBI numbers violent crime nationally for each of your states. Keep in mind, this statistic shows what is the combined rate of homicide, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, the year 2022. On the national level, the rate was 380.7 offenses per 100,000 people. In California, meanwhile, the rate was much higher, 499.5 offenses per 100,000. In Florida, lower, 258.9 offenses.
Okay. Let's look at this chart for a second, because I'm going to tell you what they're not going to address. Obviously, California has a higher crime rate than Florida, but also the national average. I do not dispute that. I think that is correct based on numbers that I've seen before. Now, this is according to the FBI Crime Data Explorer, right? These are just the ones that are also reported. So keep that in mind. The problem that I have when they start to talk about crime, they do not connect it to the root cause, which is most of the time poverty. Most crime is poverty driven. So if we want to know why does California have such a high crime rate, we'll just go back to what I was talking about previously, which is the fact that California has become too expensive for the average American to live in. That's a big part of it. You have a lot of people living in poverty. I told you the homelessness rate, they have the largest homelessness rate in the United States. So that's a big part of the problem. That's a big part of the reason why California has such a high crime rate. Now, this is not to say that Florida does not have poverty. They do, but it is not the same when you compare it to California. But listen to what they talk about.
Per 100,000. Governor Newsom, let me start with you. Your numbers are way higher than the national average. How do you explain that when safety and security, I would argue, is a prerequisite for the pursuit of happiness?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. We're near 50-year lows, down 55% violent crimes in the state of California from the 1990s. And I want to compare and contrast that with the issue in Florida that you didn't mention, and that's the murder rate. And let's broaden it more broadly. The issue is 7 of the top
Those numbers
10,
were part of the murder rate. 7
of the top 10 murder rates in the United States of America are red states. He has a 66% higher gun death rate than the state of California. He has a higher murder rate. Go to places like Jacksonville. Go to places like Orlando. Go to places like Tampa. The murder rate's off the charts compared to cities like San Francisco. And you know what? Even more egregiously, Sean, and I think this is important, the American people deserve an answer from you, Ron. You had one of the worst mass shootings in American history, Parkland. 17 kids were gunned down, lives lost, 17 others, lives torn asunder. You had a young girl by the name of Jamie Gutenberg, whose father pleaded with you to do something about it. And you know what you did? They did the exact opposite. You made it easier for felons to get guns without background checks, without any training. These people pleaded with you, the parents and the families, to get tough on gun safety. And again, you made it easier for felons. He said of you, Ron, and I agree with him, after you signed that concealed carry bill, which increases the likelihood, Fred Gutenberg said, of more Jamies losing their lives and more Parklands, he called you weak, pathetic, and small. So with respect, I appreciate you're talking to police officers in the state of California. You may want to spend a little bit more time, not on the Ohio Trail and other places across this country. You may spend a little more time back in your home state and address the murder and gun violence in your own backyard.
So I already caught Gavin Newsom in a lie, and I'm going to show you the data in just a second. Let's go back to something that he said. Let's pay close attention to what he says here when he talks about the cities.
Do something about it. And you know what you did? They did the exact opposite. You made it easier for felons to get guns.
Sorry, let me go back a little bit more.
He has a 66% higher gun death rate than the state of California. He has a higher murder rate. Go to places like Jacksonville. Go to places like Orlando. Go to places like Tampa. The murder rate's off the charts.
Okay, off the charts.
Compared to cities like San Francisco.
Okay, so that's incorrect. And I want to go ahead and pull up the data. I don't know where Gavin Newsom is getting this information from. Maybe he's just lying. I mean, he is a politician, but the one that really stood out to me was Tampa. So let's go ahead and pull that up. I want to show you how he's not telling you the truth here. 2023, compare cities crime, Tampa, Florida versus San Francisco, California. Look at the numbers. When we look at crime, comparing the two, Tampa, Florida, for violent crime, and this is percentage here, 36. All right. San Francisco, 39.6. So for violent crime, we'll get to the others. For violent crime, Gavin Newsom is incorrect. San Francisco has a higher violent crime rate than Tampa. Let's go to property crime. When we look at property crime, Tampa, Florida has 33.4. San Francisco has 79.2. Now, both of these cities have a higher violent crime rate when you compare it to the U.S., the national average, which is 22.7. When we look at property crime, Tampa Bay has a lower rating than the U.S. national property crime rate. San Francisco has a higher rating than the U.S. property crime rate. But the point is, and we don't have to get into all the logistics, but just a quick Google search. The point is, Gavin Newsom is lying during this debate. Tampa, Florida does not have a higher crime rate than San Francisco. So now that we have debunked that, let's get back to the debate. Boy, I tell you, these are easy to pick apart. Easy.
And you know what? Even more egregiously, Sean, and I think this is important, the American people deserve an answer from you, Ron. You had one of the worst mass shootings in American history, Parkland. 17 kids were gunned down, lives lost, 17 others, lives torn asunder. You had a young girl by the name of Jamie Gutenberg, whose father pleaded with you to do something about it. And you know what you did? You did the exact opposite. You made it easier for felons to get guns without background checks, without any training. These people pleaded with you, the parents and the families, to get tough on gun safety. And again, you made it easier for felons. He said of you, Ron, and I agree with him, after you signed that concealed carry bill, which increases the likelihood, Fred Gutenberg said, of more Jamies losing their lives and more Parklands, he called you weak, pathetic, and small. So with respect, I appreciate you're talking to police officers in the state of California. You may want to spend a little bit more time, not on the Ohio Trail and other places across this country. You may spend a little more time back in your home state and address the murder and gun violence in your own backyard.
So he's given examples of mass shootings, and this is true. Florida has had some mass shootings. There was the Parkland shooting. And then, of course, there was the shooting. I believe that was at the Dollar General. That one happened a couple of months ago, where Ron DeSantis went out into the community and, paid his respects and said that he was sorry for what happened, et cetera. In reference to the mass shootings, yes, they have had that issue with mass shootings.
This is the slick politician. You put up the rates. He has 500 per 100,000. Florida is 250. So that's almost twice as much. And he's trying to spin that to say California's doing good. People are leaving California in droves, largely because public safety has collapsed. You go.
No, it's largely, that is a factor, but it's largely because of the cost of living.
When Californians come to Florida, one of the things they'll say, it's almost like an out-of-body experience. They can go to the store, get toothpaste off the shelf, pay for it, and leave, because in a lot of these places in California, everything's under lock and key because they basically legalized retail theft. They have chosen in California to put the interests of the criminals over public safety. They're easier on sex offenders. They're easier on all these crimes that are leading to a collapse in the quality of life. And if you just walk around San Francisco, you will see.
Let's pause there before we get to San Francisco. Let me pull back just a little bit. Part of the reason why I believe they're more lenient on these types of crimes than before is because they don't have the prison space. I really do believe that's part of the reason, because the prisons in California are overcrowded. Really do. Now, Ron DeSantis here is correct about going into certain stores in San Francisco and them having things under lock and key. I actually was reading a couple articles about that before this debate happened. That is true. It's not just San Francisco. You can go into New York and see the same thing. You can come into Boston and you can see there are certain things here under lock and key. I was in New York recently and I went into the TJ Maxx, and they actually had the winter coats. They were locked down. Like, I was like, what? I remember I picked up a coat and I was like, let me try this. And I'm going back. What's happening? What is happening? Can't try on the coat. So it was locked. This is a TJ Maxx. This wasn't like Bloomingdale's or Neiman Marcus. This was at TJ Maxx. They had them locked down. So he's correct about that, about them locking down some of these items where in the past they may not have done so.
Of the criminals over public safety. They're easier on sex offenders. They're easier on all these crimes that are leading to a collapse in the quality of life. And if you just walk around San Francisco, you will see, and I think it's interesting, Gavin Newsom was mayor of San Francisco. So he took the San Francisco model, turned that into a template for California's collapse. Now the left wants to take the California model and use that as a template for America's collapse. We cannot let that happen.
I got a follow-up question. You brought up
Jacksonville, Florida, compared to San Francisco, is 126% higher.
Governor, let me bring up
it's 84% higher.
The next question dovetails into this.
It's 75% higher. What
Let me also say,
what are you talking about
you're
when it
just
comes to this?
jabbering. I know you
you're
like
just
to
jabbering.
jabber.
By the way, those
I
are
know you
all
like
easily
to- I know you like
fact-checked.
to lie.
Anytime you're uncomfortable,
he put
make
the
stuff
statistics up there.
Those are all
your
facts.
crime is
What
higher.
Are you doing about
we know
the
your
gun
crime's
murder rate
higher.
in your
Gentlemen,
state?
gentlemen,
What are you
I'm
doing
going to move
about
on.
the gun murder rate in your state?
We'll let the audience.
Murders in the
We'll
state of
let the
California.
audience look at the
And I think
numbers,
it's
the
shameful what
FBI
you
numbers, and
did
decide.
to those
You know, these are the two guys. You don't want to invite either of these dudes to the party. Right? Like if you're planning a party and you're inviting people, these are probably not going to be the guys that's first on your list. Oh, dear gosh.
According to the gun control advocacy group, every town for gun safety.
Yep.
Okay. California has the most, as you support, I know, Governor, restrictive gun laws in the United States. Yes. Florida has the 19th most restrictive. Yet, if you look at the year 2019, when each of you took office, California has had 21 mass shootings. Florida has had 9.
Now, this is from, listen to this. This is USA Today, AP, Northeastern University database of mass killings. Interesting. I went to grad school at Northeastern University, but what I wanted to point out here is this. It's interesting that they're arguing over who had the most mass shootings. Both states had mass shootings. And the question I think we should be asking is, why are mass shootings happening in this country so frequently to begin with in the first place? Again, not getting to the core issue. And I don't think it's just about gun safety, by the way. I don't think that's just the issue. There is something happening with the psyche of the American people where people have it's just become the norm now to turn on the news and you hear about another mass shooting. This is not something I grew up, experiencing every month. You hear about this every month now. So they're not getting to the root cause of the problem. Why are we having so many mass shootings? This is just California and Florida. This doesn't include the other states in this country. No other country in the world has as many mass shootings as we do in the United States. They don't get to the root cause.
That is according to a USA Today, AP, Northeastern University database data. Keep in mind, a mass killing is defined as the intentional killing of 4 or more victims, excluding the deaths of unborn children and the offenders by any means within a 24 period of time. I believe, Governor DeSantis, you get this first.
What California wants to do is they want to make it harder for law-abiding citizens to defend themselves. Then they go easy on the criminals who are perpetrating the crime. They don't stand up for the men and women of law enforcement. That's why a lot of people have left the state, because they don't get the support from the communities that they need. And, Gavin told another lie. He said we made it easier for felons to do. Felons are not allowed to possess firearms. That's federal law. That's been long-standing.
No background checks.
That is an
No background
absolute
checks for
lie
concealed
that he's saying
carry.
like that. That has nothing to do with buying or purchasing a weapon. So that's just a lie, another lie that's coming up. But here's the thing. People are leaving California in droves because he has failed to stand up for public safety. They are on an ideological joyride to let people out of prison early, to go easy on them. Heck, your buddy, Gavin's buddy in Los Angeles, Gascon, he doesn't even prosecute. When I was in Southern California for the Reagan debate, a lot of the women tell me they have to take off all their jewelry just to be able to go shopping, because otherwise they're going to get mugged. That is the reality that people are facing in California. Right. Gavin can try to put lipstick on that pig, but the fact of the matter is he has failed the people of California.
Governor Newsom.
He did not use that phrase there, lipstick on the pig. None of my friends that live in California have ever told me they have to take off all their jewelry to go shopping, like when they go out in California. I've never heard that before, but each to its own.
I love this guy talking about backing the blue when you dangled pardons for January 6 insurrectionists, 85 of them that were literally charged with attacking law enforcement. you talk a big game about backing the blue. With all due respect to the crime rate, again, he's not answering the fact that he has a higher murder rate than the state of California, a 66% higher gun death rate than the state of California. And I can easily answer this point. Gun safety saves lives. I don't think it, I know it. And the data bears that out in the state of California. California proudly does lead in terms of common sense gun safety. Common sense gun safety saves lives. You had the chance to do something meaningful. You had a chance to do something on behalf of those Parkland families. You did the exact opposite. You moved in the exact opposite direction. With all due respect, look at your own backyard, Ron.
So
You're not mining your backyard on this issue.
I will do that because we have we had two radical left Soros district attorneys, like your buddy Gascon in LA, one in Tampa, one in Orlando. They were endangering the public, and I removed them from their posts. Gavin Newsom has not lifted a finger to rein in Gascon in LA. That city has collapsed. That county's collapsed because he is not enforcing the law. So that's just, and here's the thing. This is what's happening. That California model,
we're a little over time.
In Philadelphia,
15,
Baltimore, all
15 seconds. We got to go break.
Come on. I mean, you're running for president of the United States. You're talking down the great state of California. You're talking down one of the great American cities, Los Angeles. That's insulting. And you're doing it because you're trying to obfuscate the facts that you have a higher murder rate in the state of Florida and the state of California.
We got to take a break.
Some of the lowest crime rates we've had in 50 years.
We'll have more with Governor DeSantis, Governor Gavin Newsom.
Well, one thing that was definitely clear from this debate is that I don't think either one of these guys are really ready to be president of the United States. There you go. There you go. Let's go to some of the comments here. Aye. Thank you for the super chat, Frank Johnson. What up, Sabby? What's up, Frank? New Pout says, I can understand why and how good a teacher Sabs was/is. I've learned a lot here, and she breaks things down in a way that a reasonable person would understand. Peace. Oh, thank you so much for that. That's really sweet. Thank you for the super chat, P. Smith. Also, no lockdowns in Florida. Thank you for that. I thought he did at one point, though. I thought he did. Thank you for the super chat, Eric. As a math teacher here in Florida who is DeSantis to talk about anyone, given that we lost 54 out of our 132 math books due to the CRT nonsense. The math books? Interesting. Simple C says, are there any states where you can afford to live on a minimum wage? The closest one I found on that Out of Reach report is Puerto Rico, which technically is in the state, but Puerto Rico, you can live there off of $9 and some change an hour for a 2-bedroom apartment. Should we move to Puerto Rico, guys? New Pout says, Sabby Sabs, you said exactly what I was thinking about Newsom saying neither are going to be the nominee. You read my mind every time. Exactly. Like neither one of them are going to be the nominee, which he acknowledged. So I don't know why they were doing it. Thank you for the super chat, Rose. Newsom, DeSantis look the same, except different color tie. And thank you for the super chat, David. 2 dirty socks arguing over who's smellier. Ouch. Ouch. You guys are brutal.